Welcome to This Show Is Not About Menopause, because menopause is only one day, so that would make for a pretty short show. Hi, my name is Shirley. I'm the founder of Menopause Chicks and privileged to be your host for these important health conversations. This is where you will find quality information and key insights about all things women's health and the years before menopause and every year after. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite subjects, sex. My guest is registered psychologist, Dr. Carolyn Klein, and it is always a treat to follow smart people on Instagram and follow their important research and body of work, and then meet them in person. Today is one of those days for me. Please join me in welcoming the director of the West Coast Center for Sex Therapy, Dr. Carolyn Klein, to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you're. It's so nice to meet you.
I know.
We were just talking about Instagram. I have been following your work. You say you're fairly new to Instagram, but the truth is, I feel like you've been there forever because I've learned so much in such a short period of time. So
likewise.
Tell me about your work and what you do.
Yeah, so I co-founded and I co-owned the West Coast Center for Sex Therapy with my colleague, Dr. Jason Winters. And we are a team of about 20 registered psychologists and registered clinical counselors. And we train PhD level practicum students in evidence-based sex therapy. So we work with individuals and couples and other partnership configurations. And we talk about sex all day long. Everything from desire discrepancies in couples to problematic sexual behaviors, concerns about sexual functioning, whether that's erections, lubrication, arousal, orgasms, sexual trauma, changes with sexuality, with aging, with medical conditions, post-cancer treatment.
Right.
And then lots of people just coming in with sexual anxiety, sexual shame, or people just wanting to evolve with their sex lives in some way.
Wow. I heard you say sexual health as we're aging.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of women getting inquisitive or stepping into this part of their health as they're navigating midlife?
Yes. We tend to see, we kind of get these bubbles. And one of those is once people are in their midlife years and the kids are a little bit older and they're navigating both changes with menopause and they're navigating changes with, we got through the early years of raising our kids. Now we want to focus back on the couple and sexuality feels different now for all these different reasons. How do we get back to connecting sexually, being a partnership? So we get a pretty big chunk of people in those midlife years.
And is there a common question that you get asked?
There's several.
Okay.
There's several.
Give us a couple.
In no particular order.
Yeah.
In some ways, I would say the biggest question we get asked, and that's right across the lifespan, is, am I normal? And so the midlife women are also coming in saying, am I normal? That I'm not thinking about sex very often right now. That it used to be really on my mind, and I used to be in the mood for it right away if my partner came up behind me while I was cooking. And now I'm sort of like, I'm cooking and I can't think of anything else, and I've still got to figure this out and that out. And am I normal that sex is not so important for me? So that's kind of our biggest question we get. The next question we get is my body responding normally? Is it normal? Should I be getting my estrogen or testosterone checked? Is there something wrong? Should I see my doctor? Or I've already seen my doctor and my doctor couldn't tell me anything. So is my body normal? Other big questions are sometimes, how do I navigate wanting to be sexual with my partner and feeling like I can't navigate the roles of being a professional woman now? Maybe it was different when I was 25 and partying in the nightclubs, but now I find it hard to go from mom and lawyer or doctor or dentist to now trying to be a sexual woman. I don't feel as much I can talk freely about sex. So we get a lot of those kinds of questions.
Wow. I mean, that sounds so heavy for the head to manage, let alone the rest of our body.
Yeah, I sometimes say to people, because they say, what's the most common reason people come into your office? And I say, it's not so much what's happening in the bedroom, it's what's happening in their heart. And as a psychologist, our big area of expertise is the emotions, and people are coming in with the shame, the sadness, the grief, the anxiety, sometimes disgust, sometimes frustration and hopelessness if there's been pain. So we do get a lot of that. But I will also say that having worked in other areas of psychology as well, sexuality is really fun because we do laugh a lot as well.
Ah, that's amazing. Yeah. And so you gave us that list, and then I'm thinking I read on your most recent Instagram post, the word prudish.
Yeah.
So we all kind of come to this conversation with those messages that we're receiving from society, maybe family, generational myths and misconceptions. What role does that play in even getting someone to pick up the phone and make an appointment with you?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. A couple of things about that. I mean, the first one is, the vast majority of our clients do not come in from having talked to their doctor about this, and they don't come in from having talked to a friend. Whereas when I worked in other areas of psychology, people might say, hey, I'm really depressed. And their friend might say, hey, go and see my therapist. She or he is great. Most people are Googling sex therapy or erectile dysfunction or low desire, and they have spoken to no one about it because of the shame of sexuality. They think they're alone. They think that people would look at them strange if they talked about it. So we still live in a very conservative society, even though here in Vancouver, we think of ourselves as not that conservative. Every day, sometimes people say, oh, well, women are so liberated. And I'm like, are we? We're still doing a lot of things like faking orgasms and doing a lot of things because we're not liberated enough to speak openly about it. So I think that for the most part, people have a huge fear that it would be shameful or embarrassing if they spoke openly about it.
Okay, I want to go there. I want to go to the word orgasm. I am under the impression that there is an orgasm gap. I am under the impression that we might not even be aware of that until, as you said, maybe the kids have left. It's an empty nest. We want to reconnect, and maybe we were faking for years prior. Help me help other women get the information and the education that they need.
Yeah, I love the question. Thank you. And in some ways, even more than the word orgasm gap, I personally love the word pleasure gap even more.
Thank you.
And others are really using the word orgasm gap. And in some ways, as long as the message gets out, it's great. It's only that I, as a sex therapist, sometimes worry about how much focus gets put on orgasm. And I think the big piece is that there's a pleasure gap. And I say that most women are still having sex more for the pleasure of someone else than for the pleasure of themselves. Most women have faked orgasms, and not just once. I think that from a research standpoint, it is really clear that there is an orgasm gap. That's how we can measure it well with the orgasms versus it's harder to measure the pleasure gap. But with orgasms, we know that about 25 to 30% more often men are orgasming than women are orgasming. Right. And that's especially in the early times of dating, hookup sex, early sex, where women feel like they should do it in a certain way. And some of that comes because we still have a huge overfocus on intercourse. In heterosexual couples, it is still very much the norm. And I see it in my office every day that when I ask them to give me the play-by-play of what does sex look like for you, it usually is some version of starting here, a little bit of kissing, then going here, then going a little bit here with hands or mouth, and then it's always intercourse. And then the ending of the experience is so often the male partner, if it is a heterosexual couple, having an orgasm. And after that, everything stops. And so we need to move away from a focus on intercourse. We need to help women to be able to speak up much more. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, yes, I'm just like nodding. I'm nodding like crazy.
Yeah, we need to help women to be able to speak up. We need to help women to know their bodies. This is one that's really dear to my heart. I don't clinically work with children and adolescents. I only work with those 19 and older, but I'm a mother. I have a 9-year-old now.
Okay.
And one of the things that's become incredibly important to me is the reality, including true for myself, that most women don't know their body parts before other people start to explore them.
Oh, so true.
Yeah. They don't teach the clitoris in school. And so most women, and again, myself included, didn't think or didn't know when I became sexually active to ask someone to touch that part because I didn't really know about that part. And to me, that's really, really not okay that we are setting up young women to first have painful or at their worst, or uncomfortable, unpleasant, non-pleasurable experiences at their best. And then they have to learn on their own 5, 10, 15 years later before they get to discover pleasure for themselves. That's not okay.
That's such a light bulb moment. Sometimes I say, the disservice that we do in health class, we teach children how to make a baby and then how not to make a baby. And then that's it.
Yes.
There's nothing more discussed.
Yes.
And now, women are waking up in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s don't understand any of the changes, don't understand the proper names of the body parts, and don't understand how to have an informed or an inquisitive conversation about that.
Yeah, it's not okay. Yeah, yeah. So that's become very passionate for me, is how do we help parents to educate their kids about their body parts and what important role those play in sexual pleasure. And then how do we help women to love their body? Because that's the other thing that I see so much is so many of my clients, and I know I see a biased sample of people who are struggling sexually, but when you're a sex therapist and people find out about that at a party, either they don't talk to me at all or they really talk to me. So I know it's not just my clients, that so many women are saying, yeah, I don't really like to look at my genitals. I don't like hold a mirror up to it. I don't really know what they look like. I feel nervous if my partner goes down on me. Do I look bad? Do I smell bad? Do I taste bad? Which are all things that get in the way of pleasure. In all my years of doing this, the thousands of men, I have not once had a man say, I'm worried if my partner goes down on me. Do I look bad? Do I smell bad? Do I taste bad? I've never once heard that. And every week I hear it from women. So that again is the pleasure gap, that it's intercourse focused, that we have shamed women and their bodies, the number of products that are available for women to pH balance and this and that, and, make it smell better and all this. The message is that body part is yucky. And so then what do we expect? How can women have the same rates of pleasure and orgasm as men?
Which feeds into the shame, which feeds into that word prudish that we were just mentioning. Wow. And then I think there's another gap too. I think it's the masturbation gap.
Yes, absolutely. And then I'm going to say, and then we can trickle down and get into the more risky territory of it's not just a masturbation gap, but it's also a home life gap. That some women are not having time and space to. That's
not a trickle down. That's we need to elevate that to the top. Yeah,
I'm still seeing way too many men. Women have stepped up professionally and are working just as much out of the home, but men have not had it role modeled for them. It's not because they're bad people, but they still are oblivious to what needs to happen, and women are carrying the mother load literally at home. And so women often are saying, I just don't have time for anything. I don't have time alone in my bedroom. I don't have time to explore my sexuality. I don't have time to explore pleasure. I can barely go and get my nails done or kind of do my basic external kind of self-care, much less the kind of personal self-care.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole bunch of gaps.
Yeah. And that's a challenge for us as we're communicating, as we're trying to be educators and purveyors of quality, good health information. It's unlikely that, the kids are going to leave for university and you're immediately going to, adopt time for your own pleasure. You're probably just going to sit down and
Yes.
appreciate some time alone. So what are sort of some of the societal or some of the personal things that we can do to get curious, to move us forward, and to, first of all, I have to underscore this, realize that we have 3 to 5 more decades of pleasure ahead of us.
Yes, absolutely. and I when I see that, I really do get a bunch of people coming into my office who are in their retirement years. My oldest client to date, I think, was 89.
Love it.
And that, it doesn't end just because you've had your children. That doesn't need to be the end of your sex life. I think there's probably a whole host of things we need to be doing, but one of them is what you're doing right now. The more we get people knowledgeable, thinking about sex differently, challenging these ideas, having role models. Most women have never had another female role model who is a professional woman who they can respect and admire and openly say, hey, I follow this person on Instagram, Sexuality has been shamed so much in women that in some ways it's either you're kind of in the slut dirty category, and slut is often put into same categories of not smart, not educated, all these things. We need to challenge these ideas that sexuality is somehow inappropriate and unprofessional so that women can start to own it. We need to talk openly about masturbation and the benefits, the health benefits, the mental health benefits of arousal and orgasm, so that people could get to the point, which some people are laughing when I say it, but to the point where instead of just saying, hey, Shirley, did you see this show on Netflix? It's so great, that it could be like, hey, Shirley, did you see this vibrator? Have you tried it? It's amazing. Or have you tried this new lube? Or have you seen this erotic material? It turned me on so much. That at this point would still kind of have people being like, And I've said often, It's bizarre to me that we spend so much money gifting people the hand and foot creams instead of the rub the clit creams, because the clit has so many more nerve endings. I would rather at Christmas get a lot more vibrators and lube and fun things rather than more foot cream.
Oh, I hope my friends are listening. Merry Christmas. Coming to you soon. Yeah. But we don't hesitate to tell our girlfriends, hey, I went for this amazing walk in the forest this morning. Yes. You won't believe the massage therapist I found. You should go too. Totally. We pass on that information. Totally. So I'm hopeful for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to challenge women. If you have not talked to your girlfriends about how they masturbate, are they still masturbating? Why not? Do they need some time? Do they need your help taking the kids so that they can have an hour to themselves? Why are we not doing that? Why are we perpetuating the shame as though that this is something that is a luxury item?
Right.
When we know now, and the research is, I always say on the one hand, we don't have enough research because it's so hard to get sex research funded. And on the other hand, the research we do have is pretty strong and powerful that this stuff has huge health benefits.
Absolutely.
That we should be having the doctor, and I know that this is hard for doctors because they don't want to have a complaint filed against them. That's again the sexual shame. But a doctor, ideally, from a research standpoint, would be saying to a client with migraine headaches, before they give prescription medications that have a lot of side effects, would say, have you tried self-stimulating? Because that is a very effective way of reducing migraine headaches. Doctors, again, are scared to do that.
Another light bulb moment. Yeah.
But if we're going to be evidence-based, that's where it's at. Menstrual cramps, migraine headaches, temporomandibular jaw pain, chronic pain. It should be, hang on, have you used some of these very natural kinds of things that are releasing endorphins, natural opioids? So that's
and if you've been told, manage your cortisol, practice mindfulness, and you're imagining that you have to sit on a pillow for an hour in the corner, and that doesn't appeal to you, or you can't make the leap there, then this is an excellent place to start that practice of self-care. Right?
Absolutely.
You mentioned Netflix. Can we talk about media?
Yes, although I'm not the expert, but let's do it.
Well, I know you're obviously we're all consumers of various forms of media. I know that women in my community are making important health decisions based on the media, the memes, the marketing. Hard to tell all the difference. And it's not always leading them to good places.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I think, as we always say, the internet and media has a lot of good information and has even more misinformation.
Yeah, we can't tell the difference.
And so my encouragement for people is, yes, look at, when you're on Instagram, look at people who are putting peer-reviewed publications, like references in when they say something. Or if you direct message them and say, I've heard contrasting things. Can you show me where the evidence is for this? It hopefully won't just be a fun little post. It hopefully will be a fun little post that also is backed up by research in some way. Look for the people who have some credibility, because yes, it's easy to say a lot of things, and sexuality in particular can be a lot of fun and entertainment, but it's also doing a lot of harm because we are giving people a lot of wrong information. Some of my red flags are every time I see people focused on positions, every time I see people focused on the 7 things you should know or the 5 things you should know, as if there's something there.
Should is a shame word.
That's right. That's right. So I think, it's tricky, but being a very, very thoughtful consumer of where are the reputable sources, and the reputable sources are usually following other reputable sources. So kind of look, measure. Once they know you, who are you following? And you're probably, because you're so evidence-based, you're only following people who are evidence-based. So kind of follow the path a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I know. And then we kind of fall into this, we have a decision tree to make ourselves, which is, am I going to call out those folks, or am I going to stay in my lane and just make sure that everything I have is verified? I think that must be so expanded and highlighted in the world of sexual health education.
I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah.
And it is really tricky because I think that, we always are recognizing that the research is still coming out.
Sure.
But when we do have clear information that, hang on, your body is normal for doing it this way, or to do it this way continues to perpetuate shame, I think it is, how do we start to call that out? How do we call it out in a kind and respectful way so that people are getting the right information, because otherwise they're just being bombarded with what's popular.
Yeah. I know you have a very busy practice and a lot of colleagues that work at your practice. What would you like to say to those listeners who maybe aren't seeing a registered psychologist?
Yeah. What I would say is, get some of these really, really great books written by people who are so knowledgeable in the field. If it's mainly for women here, I think books like Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, Better Sex Through Mindfulness by Dr. Lori Brotto, Becoming Clitorate by Dr. Lori Mintz. Those would be some of my top books, where these are people who are so well informed. So coming to see a sex therapist can be pretty expensive. So can divorce and not having harmony in your life.
Yes.
But, I would say if you're not seeing a sex therapist and you want good information, it may not be that you're always going to use Instagram where you're also having to sift through. It may be that you're going to some of the sources directly where they've laid it all out with all the references right there in the book.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Oh my goodness.
And the other one is talk to your friends, because as you start to hear what's normal there, you don't need to see what's on Instagram. You also get to hear from your friends, and they are going to have some great knowledge as well.
Before we started this conversation, I was going to ask you, what is it like going to a dinner party when Carolyn Klein is at the table?
Well, okay, I'll answer that honestly. My friends are fantastic. Out of my closest group of friends, none of them are sex therapists, and they tolerate it so well. And we have definitely made sure we don't shame sexuality. So I've shared the story recently on another podcast, but when we went camping this summer, our friends said, Carolyn, can you make sure our daughters also know all about the clitoris? Wow. And they have grown up conservatively and didn't know how to talk about it. So I brought my vulva model. Oh my gosh. I've got a life-size, realistic-looking vulva, and I brought it camping. And my philosophy is that you don't teach kids by sitting them down. You let them learn as they're curious. So I just put the vulva on the camping table. And at 8 a.m, they came out of their tents, and one of them saw it and said, there's a vulva here. And then all these girls, I think there were 5, 6 girls, all 8-year-olds, came out of the tent. And then they were like, where's the vulva? Where's the vulva? And then we had this great, I'll show you the video afterwards, I've got it on my phone, but we had this great conversation where the girls were like, at first, and it really, again, just, I'm not shocked, but I am. They came out and they saw it, and their first reaction was, ew, which I think is just heartbreaking, you know? If I had something else out there, if I'd had a skeleton, or like at Science World, a body,
another Muppet.
Like, they would have totally been curious. They wouldn't have said ew, but they said ew. And I said, why are you saying ew? And they said, well, because it's gross. And I said, why is it gross? And, I'm so proud of my daughter. She's grown up with me, and she right away got in there and was like, it's not gross. These parts of our body were involved in making us. And then I said, well, do you guys know the parts of it? And so then they all were like pointing and touching. We're like, oh, there's the clitoris, and this is where the pee comes out. And by the end, they were all touching and we're all engaged, and they all walked away with some knowledge. So that's what it is. Or with our friends, we've also had it that, yes, we have sat around and talked about how we stimulate ourselves and how we stimulate our partners and what can we learn and new tips and tricks. We have shown each other erotic material that turned us on because I said, this is crazy. You guys are my best friends. And if we can't talk about this stuff, then we're still shaming sex. So to have dinner with me means to talk about it all.
Well, and to go camping with you. I mean, I don't think that we need to put an age limit on that. Yes, teach children, but that exercise, that experience would be so valuable for my friends to experience, right?
The sad thing is, and I'm glad if I have a chance to say that too, is that the biggest barrier I see is really well-meaning parents.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest barrier is well-meaning parents who have this huge fear that if we talk openly about sex, then we are sexualizing our kids too early. They will want it too soon. And I had a family member at a family reunion in the summer say that. She said, why does my daughter need to know about the clitoris? She's so young. Let her be innocent. And it's so well-meaning. I mean, I love my family member. It's so well-meaning. But in my mind, I'm like, why wouldn't we want her to know her body before anyone else does? Why should she only learn about it when she's in her 20s, but she might have been, sexually exploring at 16? And why are we treating it differently than an elbow or anything else? And so I really want to drive the point home that the research is so clear that when children know their body parts, when they know how to speak openly about them, we see that they are less at risk of sexually problematic behaviors.
And the confidence.
Yes. They will say when something's
instilling.
wrong. Yes. They will come forward. They will stay out of situations that are good. And for all those parents who somehow still don't want their kids to have sex once they go through puberty, who somehow still are like they're too young, no problem. Guess what? If we talk to kids about sex, we actually see the research shows that they have sex later in life than those who know earlier. So if that's your motivation, then fine, talk to your kids, because at least then they don't have sex as soon, even though that is of less concern to me.
You know that I do a lot of, have a lot of conversations on Facebook. So I know the person's name, and that's about all I know. And I talk a lot about vulva and vaginal health. But sometimes I find myself in this place where I compare the skin on the vulva and the vagina to the skin on our elbow, or the skin on the outside of our nose versus the inside of our nose. And then I immediately will find myself apologizing for that. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I just compared your vagina to your elbow, and then I will like go on and explain skin is skin, blah, blah, blah. But now that I've just had this conversation with you, you're inspiring me to stop apologizing.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's a body part.
Yes. Awesome. I would love for all of us to not apologize, or not to kind of tiptoe around like, I hope this doesn't make you uncomfortable. This shouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. These are just body parts. Yeah. And they're important body parts.
Amazing. Yeah. I like to ask magic wand questions. Okay. So if I was to hand you a magic wand, what is the one thing that you, or two, what do you want to see change? What change is needed?
Oh, you're not talking about the Hitachi magic wand. Okay. I thought you were asking me a vibrator question.
Just my virtual magic wand.
I thought we were talking vibrators.
But we can go there too.
No,
we can go there too.
Again, you're stuck with a sex therapist talking to a sex therapist, where I thought, oh, you're going to ask me about the magic wand. So if you could hand me the magic wand that could do magic, what would I change?
Yeah.
Oh, great question. I would change a whole bunch of things. First thing, now I might have a different answer as soon as I walk out of here. That's even better. But my first thing that I would change is I would change sex education in schools. I would. Second thing I would change is I would change that couples never talk about masturbation and do it privately, that it isn't just something that they can do in front of each other, or say to the person, hey, I'm kind of in the mood right now. Are you? And the other person says no. And there's like, okay, well, I'll be in the bedroom if you change your mind. You know, kind of like, are you in the mood for a sandwich? That. No. Okay, well, I'm going to go make myself one. If you do want one, let me know. Like, why is it not like a sandwich? So I would get people to be able to truly explore their bodies just as openly with their partners. And I would get them to be able to communicate openly about sexuality. And I guess the other one related to what we talked about before is I would have people mixing it up, and sometimes intercourse would happen early on when arousal's high enough. Sometimes it wouldn't happen at all. Sometimes it would happen in the middle, and it would not be sort of this sign of the end of a sexual experience, because again, that's related so much to the orgasm or pleasure gap.
So fascinating. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise to Menopause Chicks. I really appreciate it. I want everyone to follow your work, and more importantly, to keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks. Thank you for listening. I know you have many options for where you spend your time, and I am grateful you chose this show today. To learn more about my guest, Dr. Carolyn Klein, please visit westcoastsextherapy.com, follow Dr. Carolyn Klein on Instagram, and check out all of her details in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, do all the things, and follow me on social media at Menopause Chicks. I'd like to say a big thank you to all the folks who support this show and share my mission for women's health. Vichy Laboratoire, FerroPro Iron, Feel Amazing Vulva and Vaginal Moisturizer, and Intimate Wellbeing. You can learn more in the show notes as well. Plus, a special shout out to the team here at Oh Boy Productions. And remember, someone you know needs this information. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you love. So thank you for sharing, and see you next week on This Show Is Not About Menopause. Intimate Wellbeing, founded by Cass and Leah, is elevating the conversation around women's sexual health. And I am so grateful they have invited me along for the ride. Sexual health is health, and Cass and Leah have taught me that embracing my joy is a key part of a healthy midlife. Speaking of joy, they are the founders of my new favorite personal lubricant, Okanagan Joy. Together, we've reviewed the best sex toys for midlife, hosted information sessions for their community and mine, and fostered a new generation of confident women living their best midlife and beyond. Learn more at intimatewellbeing.com and be sure to click on Menopause Chicks Pics.